going to continue our conversation in the ways that we can communicate. We have some effective ways and we have some non-effective ways. We are looking at 4 types of communication. Number 1, we looked at passive communication, and we look at this passivity within us. Lots of us are scared to confront stuff. It's very hard. In good relationships, there should always be a measure of confronting stuff. It's a beautiful thing when you live in community, when you live together with people, when you cohabitate with another human being, is if I don't deal with stuff on a daily basis, or, maybe not every instant, but I have to deal with stuff I love to do it on a daily basis. And sometimes it can be a hard conversation. And it can be scary to do that. But if I'm passive and I just go, everything's okay, I just take my responsibility, I just keep my mouth shut, I put it on the carpet, it doesn't bother me. No, it's okay, good. The love of Jesus, it's okay. I love you in the Lord. And we say all these things. It's like I'm actually being passive. And where does that go 2 weeks later, 2 years later? We're at each other's throat, full of resentment, full of fear. And it's like, it's not worth the hassle of this relationship. So that passive communication can really be detrimental in relationships. And this is where we want to practice the love of God. So only the love of God can compel us to act in the way of love. And so this isn't about condemnation. Some of us act in passive ways, passive-aggressive ways. The goal is to be transformed in my heart so that I can be loving to the world around me and actually feel the love, so I can act in an assertive way, and that's the loving way. So the passive form of communication, we determined that we would use words of you count, I count, that kind of wording. So passive is I don't count and you count. Then we looked at the aggressive. That's one of the ones that is my default, is I like to be aggressive. I like to be loud. I use my hands, that kind of thing. And it can be in a so I don't want to continue that behavior. I have to know about it, identify it, and bring that to God. And basically the wording behind it is I don't count and I count, you don't count. And then what we're going to get into today is passive-aggressive communication. And these are all forms rooted inside of us that come out of us. When you look at a tree, you always identify the tree by the fruit on the tree. And so there are some things inside of us, some belief systems, some experiences that have happened to us, some even cultural things, maybe some family of origin, trauma or abuse even, that actually is sitting inside of us, and it comes out in the fruit of how we talk. You will be known in what you talk over the course of time. And so a lot of this is spiritual wounding inside of us. And so there's really, I don't want us to try to think our way out of these things and that it's behavioral. We actually have to identify them. Maybe I'm being passive aggressive. I have language of what it means to be aggressive, what it means to talk in this manner. And I bring that to God, and the whole point is to get to the root system of where that's coming from. How is that being fed? It's coming out of my heart. And I find it objectionable. And that's a program of action that we have, is I get to look at the truth inside of me and go, like, I've lived a life apart from God, and I want to be connected to God, and I'm not in these parts of my life. When we look at the real problem in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, we look at on page 62, it says selfishness and self-centeredness, that is the root of our troubles, driven by 100 forms of fear and self-delusion, self-seeking and self-pity. We step on the world around us, their toes, and they retaliate. I have this tension in my life, and that's what I need a break from. That's what I need ease and comfort from. And then we read, so our troubles we think are basically of our own making. They arise out of ourselves, and the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. Above everything else, we alcoholics must be rid of self-centeredness. We must, or it kills us. And here's our solution. God makes that possible. And these often, and there often seems no way to entirely get rid of self without his aid. And so many of us have been moral or philosophical convictions galore, but we could not live up to them, even though we would have liked to. Neither could we reduce our self-centeredness by wishing it or trying on our own power. We had to have God's help. This is the how and why of it. First of all, we have to stop playing God. And so part of my separation from God is I've actually played God. And so I do it out of the beliefs and the experiences in my heart, and it comes out in my voice and my words. And so that's why we're taking a look at this, so that we can actually identify things and go, oh, wow, not be overburdened by them, but go like, I don't have the power to take this away. And I need the power of God. I need a greater power than myself to take this away. And so that's one thing with love, is what I'm learning is that love is consensual. So I actually have to bring something to God to take it away. It's not just magical. There's a lot of belief systems that once I say this sinner's prayer, I am saved and set free all at the same time, and I don't need to address anything, and I keep going to be the light of the world, the salt and light of the world. That's not my experience. My experience is that this is a relationship and not just a religion. And so I actually get to form a relationship with this power, who we call God, and we get to grow in our understanding, and we get to grow in our experience, and we get to grow in love. All right, so passive aggressive communication, beautiful, but this is the scariest one for me. In this style, so basically this style says, I count and I fake it that you count. So it's like this this perception of you actually do matter, but you don't. And I'm gonna stab you behind your back. Appears passive on the surface, but are really acting out of anger in subtle, indirect, or behind the scenes way. Prisoners of war, or POWs, often act in a passive aggressive way to deal with an overwhelming lack of power. POWs may try to secretly sabotage the prison, make fun of the enemy, or quietly disrupt the system while smiling and appearing cooperative. You see this in Hogan's Heroes, where they're digging trenches and they're making fun of the enemy. And it's kind of a spoof on this passive aggressive conversation put into a show. People who develop a pattern of passive aggressive communication usually feel powerless, stuck, and resentful. In other words, they feel incapable of dealing directly with the object of their resentment. Instead, they express their anger by subtly undermining the object, real or imagined, of their resentments. They smile while setting booby traps all around you. I don't know if you know anybody like that. Maybe you're like that. This isn't to condemn, but to bring to light. So the prayer is, God, help me see the truth. God, help me accept the truth so that I can bring these things to you. So passive aggressive communicators. This is kind of a broad paintbrush. This is what we look like. Mutter to themselves rather than confront the person or issue. May have difficulty acknowledging their anger. Use facial expressions that don't match how they feel, smiling when angry. How about the eye roll, or the sigh, like that kind of thing? Or like, and I catch myself doing this. I take a deep breath, like just to tell you how I really feel. And I believe that we can mix all of these. We can sometimes be aggressive, we can be passive aggressive or passive. The goal is to be assertive. And so I think we can interchange all of these things as we become mature in God's love, in recovery. We use sarcasm. Somebody said that sarcasm is anger's ugly uncle. Deny that there is a problem, straight up say that there's no problem. Appear cooperative while purposely doing things to annoy and disrupt. Use subtle sabotage to get even. So this is very calculated. This is very like I'm hurt and I'm going to do these things to retaliate, but smile all the way that I'm doing it. The impact of pattern of passive aggressive communication is that these individuals often become alienated from those around us. Most people in a community setting finally catch on to what's happening, and we don't really want to be a part of that person's passive aggressive communication. Remain stuck in a position of powerlessness and discharge resentment while real issues are never addressed, so that they can't mature. So I'm just stuck in these patterns. The passive aggressive communicators will say, believe, or behave like, I am weak and resentful, so I sabotage, frustrate, and disrupt. And that's okay. I deserve it. I'm a victim. I'm powerless to deal with you head on, so I must use guerrilla warfare. I plan a sabotage. I plan an attack because I'm not strong enough to face you head on. And I will appear cooperative, but I'm not. I'm going to be disruptive. And so maybe that this isn't a plan, but it's a nature within us. And that's why I wanted to start off with these kind of things come out of our mouth, but they're rooted inside of us, and we feed them on some of the unhealthy things in us. So we really need God's help to rip this up root and branch. We need his aid. And like I said, we must, or it kills us. God makes that possible. And there often seems no way entirely of getting rid of self without his aid. And so that is the hope, that the world around you doesn't have to change. The world around you doesn't have to come into agreement with you and placate you. That's not the hope. The hope actually will be that I change inside, that these things inside of me that come out of me are actually going to be ripped out of me, and a whole new root system is going to start to take place, and it's going to start to grow. And so what was natural before is unnatural now. What was inside of me of irritability, restlessness, discontent, fear, rage, malice, insecurity, injustice, victimness, all of those things that I lived on for 30, 40 years, all of those things are going to be ripped out of me, and the love of God is going to be planted and rooted inside of me, so that I can have a whole new life and a whole new set of principles and a whole new outlook. And then the things that come out of your mouth will actually shock you at the beginning of your recovery. I promise you that, because that's what happened to me. Things, the insides start to change, and that changed my actions. And I remember starting to work in my service to others, and I got to work at a house with a care home for guys with mental illness. And it's so foreign from anything I ever did, because I was a trades guy. I was in the elevator union. I was a heavy equipment operator, and for 15 years of my life. And so now I'm working with men that are reliant. They are reliant on me and my service to them. I make them food. I give them medication. That was a big thing. As you know, it was my first and a half year, second year of recovery. I was given the keys to a drug cabinet, and I'm like, do these people know? Should they? I told them I'm in recovery. I have a criminal record. Oh my God! They just gave me a key to, like, there's enough. And there was older people working there. If you know older people, especially men, I think it's like they save all the pills. And I'm like, there's enough to kill like a stampede of horses in here. And you just gave me the key. Huh. And I had this responsibility, and I had these men, and it got me out of myself. And I remember my first week, this man, big man, he had trouble sleeping at night, and he wore one of those masks, sleep apnea masks, and he asked me to tuck him in. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, tuck you in? Like, what does that mean? I don't really know, but I have this new root system that says, yeah, I want to tuck you in. This should be interesting. And I put this man to bed, and I actually tucked in his sides of his sheet. And then he puts on, I help him put on his mask. And then I'm like, okay, good night. And then he like takes off his mask. And if you know anybody with sleep apnea, when they take off their mask, the air is going different places. And he's like, pray for me. He sounded like a little Darth Vader. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so I just start praying for him. And I just say, bless this man, help him to have a good night's sleep. Let the enemy not come into his dreams. And I just said, amen. And that's the beautiful thing about this program. I don't have to work against myself. All I have to do is observe and take it to God and go like, take my will in my life and transform me. These root system that I have, I need it pulled up root and branch. That is our hope, that God will do for us what we couldn't do for ourselves. My hope before was alcohol can do for me, drugs can do for me what I can't do for myself. But that ended up in destruction and death. And so I hope that everybody can find this power in God to be able to do for you what you can't do for yourself.